All right. Hello. Hey there, Feather. Oh, wait, we can't hear you.
Here I
Yeah.
am.
There you are.
Yay!
Hey, everyone. We had
Hello.
a little bit of some tech issues, but we made it just, a few minutes late, but that's okay.
That's
We're
great.
on India time, which
Divine time.
yeah, there's
Mhm.
there's no real like time is amorphous. There's no such thing as time in India. Apparently, that's what my husband says. So, anyways,
Nice.
well, um, hey everyone, want to welcome you to our Tantra Talks. I'm Lisa Witter, and I'm here with my dear friend Feather Rose, and I'm actually super lucky and I feel blessed because Feather and I live like maybe a couple miles from each other. And that doesn't happen so much these days in this online space where a lot of people are collaborating and friends, but they're like in different parts of the world. So yeah. So, anyways, we're both coming at you from very rainy Sebastopol, California, which is just north of San Francisco, a little bit like an hour or so north of San Francisco. And we're here again, Tantra Talks. We want to just get real and unscripted and raw and live and talk about what it means to live a Tantra informed life. And I happen to be a student practitioner of non-dual Shiva Tantra. Feather is a student practitioner of Taoist Tantra. So we're going to just talk about Tantra a little bit. And before we do dive in, I just want to let you know that these talks, because we will be doing these on a regular basis, are sponsored by the Tantric Arts Collective. And the Tantric Arts Collective, we are a group of professional teacher practitioners, coaches, therapists, counselors, and we're all coming together. We're united by our passion for bringing the wisdom of Tantra into our lives. And so we're really happy to be here with you and spreading this to our local and global communities. And we just sort of opened up our account here on Instagram. So be sure to follow us on Instagram at Tantric Arts Collective. And you can also check us out at our website, which is www. Why do I even say that? Don't need to say www these days. Tantricartscollective.com. And you can check out our classes, our workshops. Feather and I will be letting you know a little bit more about that as we hop in. But okay, enough of me talking. Hey, Feather.
Hi.
How's life?
Life is good. I'm so grateful to be here with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same. Yeah, really excited to be here with you. And I thought we would just spend a little bit of time today talking about, what sparked your interest in Tantra. Maybe we could each talk a little bit about that
Mhm.
and what type of Tantra we practice. Because I don't think that people really know that there are, I think people in our world know this, but the general public maybe don't understand that there are different types of Tantra. Not everybody practices the same type of Tantra. So might
Right.
be valuable to talk a little bit about what type of Tantra we practice, even though I already said that. But what does that mean, even,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah. So I guess just for me with the Taoist Tantra, um, from a young age, I found yoga, meditation, and became a massage therapist in my early 20s. So that's really how I started learning about Tantra, was through kind of the energy healing practices because of learning about the chakras and how energy moves in the body, which was really more classical Tantra. Um, but it wasn't until I actually had a miscarriage, gosh, it was probably like 8 years ago, that I really dove into my womb, into my sexual energy. And that is where I found my teacher, Minka De Vos, who is the author of Tao Tantric Arts for Women. And finding her book and doing her practices really inspired me to go study with her in person. And so the form of Tantra that I'm most connected to is the Taoist Tantra. And it's really the feminine arts, the feminine based practices where we begin to really understand that our sexual life force energy is the fountain of vitality that lives within us. And through the tantric arts, we really learn how to utilize arousal, sexual energy to revitalize our organs, our glands, our tissues, to uplift the whole internal environment of our body so that we can glow, so that we have this radiance about us. And, you know, for longevity, for connection. Um, so yeah, this has been one of the greatest medicines of my entire life. When I found these arts, it really was the medicine that healed me from my miscarriage, helped me to connect more deeply to my sensual nature, um, and also my energetic body, which, you know, through the Taoist arts really brought me back into classical tantra to really begin to open my chakras using mantra, mudra, yantra, and understanding how that flow works in the body, so that then, yeah, just opening into more expansiveness within my consciousness and my body and my soul and my spirit. So that's it in like a real short
That
nutshell.
is a little short nutshell. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there because
Yeah.
um, it's interesting. I feel like, I mean, I grew up in California. You know, in California is I was not born in California. I was born in Ohio, but moved to California when I was 3 or 4. So basically, grow, born and almost born and raised in California. And California is just such a different. There's everybody always says it, you know, it's just its own thing in California. And I think back before I even moved to the Bay Area, right after I had graduated college, and I was living in San Diego and was very much into all of the healing arts. I was studying Feldenkrais. I was in a shamanic, a course for shamanism, and this is back in the 90s. And same, you know, I was learning about the I always want to say the chakras, learning about all of the energy systems, and then stumbled upon Margot Anand,
Yeah.
and of course all of her work. And at that time I didn't really understand, I don't think, that that was tantra, and I didn't really understand what tantra was. I was just interested in her work and her books, and at that time they were tapes. They weren't even CDs. I was listening to tapes of Margot Anand, leading her different meditations, all the different amazing meditations. And so, really, my um, introduction to Tantra was part and parcel because of it sounds like the same as you, the world we lived in, we're interested in the healing arts, interested in esoteric practices, and the tantric arts just sort of what is a part of that world.
Mhm.
Really, it is. And you know, my journey with tantra has been interesting because it wasn't like I was at that point in my 20s thinking, oh, I want, you know, tantra. It was just a part of everything I was studying. It was just in the sphere, in the realm. And then later on in life I started working for an organization that claimed to be teaching integral tantra. And I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool," or whatever. And long story short, because we can get into it in a different one of our Tantra talks, it ended up being a very abusive organization. It ended up, you know, there was abuse of power, abuse of sex, these types of things. So it was nothing like I had imagined when I was, studying Margot Anand and reading her books, and then coming into this and being in that system for a few years and sort of clawing my way out of it. I was so anti-Tantra. I was like, fuck Tantra. Like, I'm not having anything to do with this because it's evil. like, like that's what it felt like, because I had been in an abusive situation, and I saw what was happening with the people, and it was not a good thing.
Mhm.
And that wasn't actually that long ago. Um, so I got out of that, and I, for me, I had been studying and already been on the path of self-realization with Yogananda and Initiate and Kriya Yoga, so Kriyaban, and deeply studying that. And when I got out of that organization, I just was sort of praying, like, where's my next step? Like, where am I going here? And I stumbled upon another tantric community. Like, and I didn't realize that. I think what happened was that was when my eyes were open to true classical yoga, because what Margot Anand teaches isn't classical yoga. I mean, sorry, classical yoga, classical tantra. It's very, very beautiful and valuable, and her work is amazing, I have to say. But it's not classical tantra. So my mind was blown when I sort of got into this world of classical tantra. And so, anyways, that's my nutshell of sort of, you know what I mean? Like, finding this path. I think it's different for everybody, but it sounds like we have some similarities there.
Definitely, definitely. And I think with any spiritual path there is the shadow, right? The shadow side of it. And it's really unfortunate, but I'm sure you learned a lot through that process, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I know a lot of sisters who've actually been involved in the shadow side of tantra, and it's these these are all opportunities for us to grow. And I think it's really important right now for women to stand up and to be teaching these ways, because for a long time it's only been men. And unfortunately, there's a lot of teachers, and women too, that aren't of the highest integrity when it comes to this. Um, yeah, I've been really fortunate in that with my teachers with Tantra have all been, almost all of them except for one, have been female. I'm very selective about the men that I work with, or, when it comes to these sort of teachings. But
Yeah.
there are really good male teachers out there as well.
I
So
think, like everything, there's always good teachers and
yeah,
not so good, or people who don't have the highest integrity, or who are drawn to this path because they think, I don't, I, they think a certain way, and have great charisma and pull people into their circles. And it's unfortunate because we're seeing a lot of it. And I know we're not really necessarily, it's just part and parcel of this conversation of Tantra that has to be
definitely.
had. Anyways, like, I don't want to ignore it.
Yeah,
I
that
was
could be
a
a whole
part of
nother
it.
talk.
Yeah, we can have it as another talk. And it's just a reality. But I think one of the things that I was really excited about in meeting you and talking to
Mhm.
you is how both of us are so committed to our practice of Tantra, and have seen the benefits in our everyday life. Like, it's not just about sex and sexuality and being in your sexuality. It's like a way of living an embodied life, a fuller life, a life, I like to say fuller and freer life. But free from what? Free from, like, the burdens of any ideas and constructs of who you think you are that are bogging you down,
Right.
especially in today's world. It really is the path for those of us who are in relationship, who are living life, who are working. It's not the path for the renunciate. And that's what I love about it. I'm like, it's so practical. It's such a practical
Yes.
path. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Call it the householder's path. That's what I appreciate about it too. And I feel into my practice, one of the greatest gifts is really learning how to weave divinity within my humanity. And I feel like that's what the practices are all about in my world, is just really opening the pathways for the divine to move through me and to accept all of me, no matter what I've done or how I've been or whatever. Tantra really offers this beautiful embracing of all of who you are. And
Yeah.
having a practice of that, really being able to open the channels and work through things with a greater perspective, and having just a deeper connection to the way even that energy moves in your body. I mean, with a lot of the meditations I've done, it's all about connecting and opening and allowing what's here to be here. And it's the biggest gift.
Yeah. I'm curious to talk about that. Like we don't have to talk about it all today because we'll be
Mhm.
doing many of these, but the different types of practices. Because I know in classical non dual Tantra, there are very specific types of practices that we do. But so, anyways, as you mentioned that, I'm like, oh, yeah, note to self. Let's do an episode just talking about like the different types of practices, because I think that would be of interest to people of our the different types of tantra and the different types of practices that come with those different types of tantra, which
Right.
brings me to why don't you tell us a little bit more about Taoist Tantra, and then we can see what the overlaps are between
Right.
classical and Taoist.
So the Taoist arts, a lot of the practices that have been given to me through my teacher were from Montauk Chia. And so these are, he had a really masculine way of sharing a lot of the sexual practices. So in Taoist Tantra, it is really much focused on learning how to harness your sexual energy, which is quite different than classical Tantra, although I think that they're very much the same, because Kundalini and the sexual energy that we work with in Taoist Tantras, I believe the same essence. But through the feminine practice, through Minka really taking the lineage from which Mantak Chia has taught, really made it accessible for women. And so a lot of the Taoist Tantra is really learning how to balance the organ system. Okay. So, like, we don't tend to work with chakras, we work with three dantians, or elixir fields. And within those dantians, there is the shamanic medicine of the organs, and how the organs are connected to the seasons, connected to the elements. Um, and we work with the organ system through breath, through meditation, through sound, to open the channels. So there's a lot of emotional alchemy that we do in Taoist Tantra. There's a lot of learning how to cultivate more energy, how to fill your reservoirs within the body, like your kidneys. The kidneys are known as the batteries of the body that hold your primordial sexual energy, your primordial essence. And so through practice, we learn how to build this nectar. We learn how to store chi within the body to build vitality. And then through the cultivation, then we learn how to circulate it. And so in Taoist Tantra, the microcosmic orbit is a huge practice of learning how to circulate energy around the spine, which is another way of charging your battery. So it's really a lot about vitality and how to connect to that true essence of who you are. And so for women in particular, there's the jade egg practice, which is really learning how to strengthen, but also lengthen the muscles of the pelvic diaphragm. And it's through this strengthening and lengthening, being flexible within the pelvic diaphragm, is really how you learn to draw energy into the body and how to sublimate it. So there's a lot of, we cultivate, we circulate, and then we sublimate, and we draw the energy up into the different centers, up through the different pumps of the body. And this energy becomes like spiritual fuel that then begins to awaken us and allows us to just connect to the more expansive, beautiful aspects of life just as much in a deep way, but also honoring and meeting the difficulties and the obstacles in the same way. Seeing that and this is kind of maybe an overlap of just seeing how everything, whether it's a struggle or whether it's a blissful experience, has the same gold or the same nectar for us to learn from and to grow from. So yeah, with Taoist Tantra, there's a lot of it's very akin to like the traditional Chinese medicine sort of framework of working with the organs, the glands, very much an energetic practice. So there are partner practices of sharing energy and learning how to circulate energy together to build chi, to allow that evolutionary force of aliveness to rise within us and merge us with the divine. One of the most beautiful things that Minka has shared with me, and that I really feel deeply in my own body, is that our orgasmic energy, and that doesn't mean through the act of sex, it can be an aliveness that grows within you in any moment, is actually the aliveness that is able to repair our DNA and our cells on that primal level, right? And so it's really sweet. It's very, very joyful, these practices. One of the main practices is the inner smile, and it's learning how to smile into your body, into your glands, into your organs, to uplift the energy. So yeah, I am in love with it. I love
Yeah,
I love everything about Taoist
how
Tantra.
long have you been practicing it?
So for the Taoist, it's been about 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Before then it was mostly chakras and learning, I had a teacher from the Sri Vidya lineage of more classical tantra, and a little bit of neo tantra, but not too much. I loved the Taoist tantra because it was a lot of personal practice first, and I really feel that to know thyself is like the greatest gift you can give yourself. And that I really feel that through that Taoist Tantra, it really offered an opportunity to really get to know me in personal practice and doing the energy circulation. So
Yeah, cool.
yeah.
I think it sounds so from what you're saying, or what I hear you saying, like one of the big fruits, as we would say, of the Taoist tantric practice is vitality. Is that
Yes,
right? Like just
definitely.
that vitality. Yeah,
It's
that's
the Shen. They call it the Shen, and it's the
the Shen.
glow around the being that we are feeding through the process of cultivation, circulation, and then illumination.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So you're doing a lot of work and I've taken your classes before, which I really love. I love your if you're in Sebastopol, Feather teaches, or you're in the Bay Area, she
Mhm.
teaches amazing workshops and classes on this. So I've been very blessed to be able to take her classes before, but it's very much an energetic practice,
Yes.
the Taoist. And I think that that's while energetic practices are a very big part of non-dual tantra as well. We do a lot of work with the chakras, so the 5 different chakras, the central channel, the bindus. So we work with essence points. And we use them, sort of the goal as opposed to vitality might be a one aspect or part of the fruit of practice in non-dual tantra, but I think more the main focus of non-dual tantra is awakening to our true nature
Mm.
and liberating ourselves from the ideas and stories of who we think we are. And those
Right.
would be sort of be these two sort of types of different types of practices in non-dual tantra. And in non-dual tantra, which I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about, Taoist tantra. So the view is very important in non-dual tantra, to understand what the view is. And I always tell this to my students, because if we don't understand what the view or philosophy is of a specific lineage, then how do we know that we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish with our practice? So it's always good to know, what is the view. So the view of non-dual tantra is that all that exists throughout all time and beyond is one infinite consciousness. But that one infinite consciousness appears as two. It appears as Shiva and Shakti. It appears as um, still, silent spaciousness, which is the Shiva aspect of consciousness, and it appears as power, energy, manifestation, which is the Shakti um, aspect of consciousness. And so our practices then, we do different types of practices to come to the direct realization of our true nature as both Shiva and Shakti. So we have sets of practices. We have a certain types of practices that are called direct experience practices, where it's direct and you go straight to the experience of still, silent spaciousness. And you can do that, for instance, through any one of your essence points, can be used for that. Um, and we also have the experience of Shakti, of our power. And we do what are called empowerment types of practices, where we're using more. Um, it's more like what you're doing, Feather, with the Taoist Qigong. It's vitalizing, it's breath, it's pranayama, it's the movement of energies. But then there's another type of practice that's really important in this path as well, which is the contemplative practices of the teachings. So there's scriptures, and then there's the study and contemplation of those scriptures. And that's really critical, because those scriptures give us they're related to the view. They give us, what is the view, what is the philosophy. And there's a really beautiful type of contemplative practice where you can contemplate on just one sutra, for instance, and sense into what state of being must the person who wrote this have been in when it was written. Because these scriptures were written by enlightened beings. So can we align with what it must have been like? What must it be like to be someone who's written this? Like, where must I be coming from to be able to understand directly what this scripture is saying? I'm not really saying it very well, but um, in any case, these are sort of the differences. But it sounds like the big overlap that we have um, between Taoist Tantra and non dual Tantra is really at this intersection of the energetic practices.
Definitely. And then you speak of Shiva and Shakti. Well, in the Taoist philosophy, there's also yin and yang. And
Yeah.
so it is fairly similar. It's just different names, I think, for somewhat of the same things. What's really interesting, though, in the Taoist philosophy, the active component is yang, which is more of the energy, the fire, the action, and the more yin component is the feminine, which is kind of the opposite of Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is generally more the consciousness, the spaciousness, and Shakti is the aliveness. So in yin and yang, it's the opposite when it comes to the masculine feminine sort of pole, which is interesting because
Yeah.
also in Taoist philosophy, in the fullness of the yang, you'll find the seed of the yin, and in the fullness of the yin, you'll find the seed of the yang. So
Yeah, and you say that it's really it's good because this can be confusing to people, um, because again, these different philosophies they're saying the same thing, but they have slight differences like this. Where in Taoism, the masculine is more the active, and the feminine is the more open, nurturing, spaciousness. And I believe it's the same. I'm not a scholar at all in Indian philosophy, but I believe it's the same in Buddhism as well, where it's flipped, where the masculine is the more powerful, active, and the feminine is the more passive. And that's the other interesting thing, is that in non-dual tantra, we don't really talk too much, or ever, I would say, about divine feminine and divine masculine, because because it's non-dual, there's not really a distinction. There is no masculine and feminine. There's Shiva and Shakti, who are anthropomorphized as masculine and feminine, but it's just a metaphor. It's not a real thing. So we never really say in non-dual tantra, oh, I need to step more into, I'm going to embrace my divine feminine or my divine masculine. Those, it's not seen in that way. Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like in the ancient Taoist practices, it's the same. It's more solar and lunar,
Yeah.
active and passive, softness and more fierceness, rather than masculine and feminine, like divine, like when it comes to that. So I feel like
Yeah.
that's more of a modern way of understanding the polarity. Like we've had to place words on it to try and help us understand it on a deeper level with this sort of language. So
You know what else, before we wrap up, I think would be really good to touch on is, how do you make the distinction between Neo Tantra? I think we should clarify what is Neo Tantra, and also Taoist Tantra. Like, how does that fit in? Because, like you're saying, there is a lot of, it sounds like in the philosophy, a lot around our sexuality. So, how would you make that distinction, or is there, or are they
mm,
connected, or what
I
would you
feel like
say?
Neo Tantra is more partner practice, sacred intimacy, learning how to remain open, your channels open and present in partnership. Like Neo Tantra is a lot of partner practice, whereas in Taoist Tantra, and what I have experienced through my body, I'm also not a scholar, but with my own practice and through the teachings that I have received, a lot of the Taoist feminine arts are personal practice. It's a solo practice, although there are partner practices that you can do, but that's not so much the focus. You really want to harness your own energy and be able to understand your own energy before you start doing partner practice. So I think that's in the neo-tantric workshops I've done and I've experienced. It's a lot of sacred intimacy,
Right. Yeah,
more
it's
so
about
than
relationship. It's about being in relationship, and this yeah, sacred intimacy and love and sex and
yeah,
intimacy. And
yeah.
I think that there's a really number one, I think it's really good to understand what are these. If there's Neo Tantra, there's Taoist Tantra, there's non-dual Tantra, there's all different types of Tantra, there's dualist Tantra, so it's good to have a little bit of an idea of what these are, so that especially for newcomers who are like, I always say, people coming to my class, okay, I'm not teaching anything about sacred sexuality in my class. It's not what we're doing here. And some people are surprised because they've read books and their idea of Tantra is Neo Tantra, which it totally has an appropriate place
For sure.
in our life. Like it's very empowering. It's very if you have a very good teacher, which I have had in Neo Tantra before, and it's wonderful. Like, it opens you up. It teaches you how to truly connect with your partner.
Yeah.
And it's also not anything related to Taoist Tantra, or
Right.
the teachings aren't Taoist Tantra, and they're not non-dual Tantra. So it's just good to know these distinctions going into it when anybody is looking for, curious about peeking around and what class do I want to take, to sort of know these differences a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, from my understanding and what I felt in my body is Tantra, I think literally means like method or to weave. And I think that the sexual arts came into it because humanity, I feel like we're the most severed from that. And so if we're weaving our divinity with our humanity, that energy is going to want to go to the one place that I think we're the most severed from. And I think that's why it's become so big and with the sexual arts, because that's where we all need, I feel like, the most healing to begin, because it's the foundation of where we come from. And
Mm,
so I think
yeah.
that's why it's most popular, why it's taken over a little bit of the tantric world. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
once you
that's
get through that, then you realize there's like way more to it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, sex is one piece of, one very, very small piece of the bigger puzzle. One of my teachers, who I absolutely love here in the Bay Area, she always says that relationships are a cauldron of consciousness. And that, and so I use that term all the time too. I'm like, it's so true. Relationships are a cauldron of consciousness. And that if you have a disrupted relationship with someone else, it doesn't matter if it's your partner or your friend or your mom or dad or your child or whatever. If you have a disrupted relationship with someone else, it's a symptom of a disrupted relationship with yourself and a disrupted relationship with the divine. So the healing has to come actually first with yourself and with the divine, before even relating to other. Anyways, I feel like we could talk about this forever, and now we're just sort of we're planting seeds for all different types of conversations that are to come in the future. Yeah, and I'm just you mentioned a book at the beginning of our stream here, and I don't know if that would be the book that you would recommend to people. It would be. Can you say it again? Just let people know your
Yeah,
book recommendation if
our book,
anyone is interested.
totally. Tao Tantric Arts for Women by Minka De Vos.
Beautiful.
Really, really good book.
I don't think I have that one. I might
You
get that
should
one. Yeah,
get
I
it.
think I'm gonna get it. And then I'm pretty sure you have this book. The
Mhm.
book that I would recommend for anyone interested in non-dual tantra is Tantra Illuminated by Christopher Wallace. He also goes by Harish, and he's actually my teacher. Just a phenomenal book, and it basically gives you everything you need to know about what is non-dual tantra. It is a bit of a hard read if you're not into philosophy, so sometimes listening on Audible, I have found, I'm like, oh, it's nice
Mhm.
to just listen to him talk, read it to me so I don't have to read it. But
That's what I do.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. So, well, I think we'll wrap it up here, but I do want to encourage everyone once again to check us out at tantricartscollective.com. And you can find out more about our classes, our upcoming events and workshops. Over there, there's a calendar that has all of Feather's upcoming workshops and classes, as well as mine. And we're adding the other people that are in our collective. They're going to be added to that calendar as well. And I just want you to know that we are local to the Bay Area. Feather and I are. However, we are also a global reach as well, because we will be doing online offerings and workshops and classes. So we hope you connect with us. And our handle at here on Instagram is at Tantric Arts Collective. And I think there's a total of 3 followers right now, because we just opened. One of them is me, one of them is Feather. So help us build our Instagram account. We just opened it less than 24 hours ago. So got to start somewhere. Yeah. So Feather, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I'm so glad that we're connected and that we're doing this, and it just feels really lovely. So thank you.
And thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
You.
And we'll see you. Just be sure, actually, Feather's handle, her personal handle is Spiritful Woman. And mine is Karmic Warrior. So we'll also be putting out announcements on our next Tantra Talks, which will be just sort of random. We don't have a set day or time for them. They're just so make sure you follow us and keep an eye out for our offerings. And thanks again so much for being here with us. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.